We all expected eventually this might happen, given the new general manager, Bill Guerin, in place. All that said, were you at all surprised today when the word came down?
I fired coaches, and I fired them late in the year as well. But I was really surprised today that Boudreau was let go. And I say that because I came back last night. I had a dinner meeting, and after it was over, I watched some of the game on my phone, and then I replayed the goals. And I thought that the Wild, even though they had some guys not playing very well, they had a 3-1 lead and they could win the game. And still, like, even though it played well, he gets roamy sometime. He gets out of position, and that was costly. And so I still thought they got a point out of it, to 3 out of the playoff position. They've made up some big ground here in the last 10, 11 games. And so I thought they were basically sitting pretty good. I know they got a tough road because they got to jump teams, but their consistent play over the last 10, 11 games has been good enough for them to move up, and I think that they still had a chance to move up, so I was surprised.
So, that being said, look, as I said, I think the expectation was eventually you'd get your own guy in here. I guess I'm trying to figure out what the advantages of doing it now. I mean, what we heard from Guerin today was, well, I've been thinking about this for a while. We should not have lost. He flat out said that's a game you can't lose, last night's game, and that, sometimes a team just needs a new voice. But based on everything we know, is this the voice that's going to be that different, that's suddenly going to make things look a lot different for this team given the position it's in?
Well, first of all, I would have bet, I'd have given you heavy odds that Bruce would not have been re-signed next year. And I find no fault with that, even though Bruce has done a very good job. But a new general manager coming in wants to be comfortable with the people he works with, and he should have the right and does have the right to hire people that maybe think along his lines, or people he's dealt with in the past, so he knows their capabilities, etc. So I didn't expect Bruce to be back after this year. But because the Wild have been able to compete as well as they've done this year, when at the outset of the year I thought it'd be a long shot to make the playoffs, because they are getting older, they are getting slower. After having a terrific run for 6 years, you got to start building the team back. And last night, the team that played that caused this is a good example of this, because the New York Rangers a couple of years ago, right in February, thought we're not going anywhere in the Stanley Cup with this team, so we're going to just tear it down. They sent a letter to their season ticket holders saying, we're not capable of winning the Stanley Cup, so we're going to tear it down and build it back up. And they've been fortunate because they made some good trades. They got a lot of assets that they stockpiled, which is what Guerin did with Zucker, because I thought that was a good trade because he started stockpiling draft choices. They moved up from 11th to 2nd in the lottery draft. They were lucky to win that. So these kind of things happen. But at this time, because I think Boudreau's getting as much as you can get out of this team, I'm surprised. Now you're getting a guy that's coming in interim who's been with them all year long. He might change the lines. And if he's going to change the systems, it's going to take him some time to get it done effectively, which I don't see how much you're going to change the systems. Because the one thing about the Wild, even though they are older and they're not a fast team, they're tough to play against. They play smart. If you look at the scoring chances they give up in a game, they're among the best in the league. So you can't do much better than that. And so you got to learn to make your chances count, score goals, and then hopefully you get good enough goaltending to win. So a coaching change usually gives you a jolt for 2, 3, 4 games, and that's it. So I don't think that there's going to be much difference. And frankly, if it's as solid as it's been thus far, they'll stay in a playoff hunt.
Let me ask you this. Micheletti offered up an interesting theory that he went all the way back to, do you remember that occasion very early in the season, I think it was, after the slow start, when Zucker made a comment about we all have to get better, and that includes the head, basically including Boudreau. And it got a lot of attention at the time. Zucker backed it up, or sort of backed away from it and said, "Look, I was not trying to take a shot at the head coach. I'm throwing out the all-inclusive thing. I'm making it clear with everybody involved that's not my intent. It wasn't a shot fired across the bow." Micheletti says he believes that whatever Zucker's intention was there, that it sent a message to this general manager that the head coach didn't deal with it in a way that head coaches need to deal with those kinds of issues, and that potentially then it was perceived as, well, if that's not inmates running the asylum, that's a coach who is not fending off how that opening might be taken by other players, and that in his experience, you just don't see that sort of thing happen, and that coaches have to show that they can nip that in the bud. Do you make anything of that? Do you think that has anything to do with why Guerin would make a move?
No, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that at all. Frankly, it just doesn't happen this day and age. You can go back to when I was playing, Goldsworthy came off the ice at the end of the first period, and he was still skating, and a buzzer was going. Ren was yelling at him. He's going to send him to the minors, and they punch him right in the jaw in front of 15,000 fans. and Goldsworthy spent, career there for, you get people that are, how about Parisi when he talked about Adam Oates and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and a lot of people handle it. And if you go back to Scotty Bowman, there's been guys that have criticized Bowman or yapped about him in the paper. Scotty didn't care about it. The Montreal Canadiens, Lafleur was upset or Savard was upset if they said something. Scotty wasn't going to trade him. Sometimes you get reporters that are very close to the team,
mm-hmm.
and they get and encourage guys to say something that says it. And after the guy says they regret it. But let me tell you one thing. If you're running even a business and letting people's statements affect how you run the business, you're not running properly. You've got to be able to take it, handle it, deal with it, and make a decision. If someone was going to, there's been so many cases where people have been upset. Look at Steinbrenner. How many people talked about Steinbrenner? How many times Martin did it? Got hired back 1,000 times. No, you got to handle it. You got to live with it. It makes for good copy. But I don't care who you are. You don't run a business and make a decision because somebody said something, unless it, we're talking about seeing something about the business or how it's being run, blah, blah, blah. That you can't just say, you better not talk or you're out of here. You can't say it in business. You can't say it in sports or anything else. Yes, people got to be smart about it, and then they're not going to be someone's favorite. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if the guy's worth something on your team and he can contribute, you try and handle it. You try and live with the best you can. But otherwise, you'd have all kinds of changes in this world.
Well, but I think in this case, so the question is, do you need to confront it, or do you run the risk that within the locker room? And we have talked about this before, going all the way back to when Yo was dismissed. This perception that on this team that there may have been that some of the veteran players maybe were a little too close, had too close a pipeline with the owner, and the old issue of that there's this, even within the locker room, a feeling that some players have the ear of management in a more powerful way than they should, and that if that's not dealt with within the forget the media part, if that's not dealt with and confronted and answered, that it could end up becoming a destructive issue within a locker room.
I'm saying you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I'm saying you got to be strong enough in your own conviction that you don't just make a decision to get rid of players because you can't deal with it. And believe me, it didn't only happen there. It happened with Yo. It happened with Parisi. It happened with Suter. I mean, we've heard a lot of these stories. And it's not just this team, by the way. We're close to this team, but there's other teams in the league where things that are said and done and go on with it. But you have to, at the same time, be strong enough to handle it properly. If it is something that's going to be destructive to the team and not going to change, then you deal with it. But because somebody one day makes a statement in the paper, and by the way, Bruce is strong enough to handle that stuff. I don't think Bruce caved in for any of those guys. If anything, that's one of the reasons why some of them might be upset with him, because he doesn't take to complaining or pandering or whatever.
So you don't think you don't think that's the kind of thing where there should be any concern about the fact that Bruce got run over by guys, as has been alleged in the past?
No, I really think that, and I've talked to you about this before, I really think that there was going to be a coaching change at the end of the year. There would be a coaching change this year if they ran into maybe a 6, 5, even 4-game losing streak that completely was going to put them out. There'd be a coaching change. It would be Evenson because he doesn't cost very much more. He's an assistant coach on there. Gives him an opportunity to look. And we all know that Bill is going to make changes. He should make changes. He's going to have his own people, which is an expected thing. And Bruce wasn't going to fit in the plans. It's just a fact that surprised me because the way they're playing and hanging in there.
Yeah.
I hope that they're right, that they go on a streak, and able to make it. But I don't see that happening. I wish I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't see them playing any better after 3 games than they're playing right now. By the way, they're playing pretty solid right now. So,
7 out of 10.
The goaltender, Stalock played good, but he does some roaming. He's done a position 2 times in goals. You can't blame the coach for that.
No,
you can't blame the coach for some of the things, some of the way some of these guys have been playing lately. He can sit them, but you're really restricted by the call-ups, by the salary cap, by what you can do for adjustments here, and you're going on. People forget this. You're playing the game every second day, so not only you have to worry about how you're handling the guys that game. You have to make sure you're keeping them fresh enough for the game 2 days from now, and then a back-to-back, and then another day, and then another game or another back-to-back. So there's a lot that goes into it that no one's paying attention to.
It's going to sound like we're kind of standing tall for a very popular guy, and I think people have to understand you are more than any of us aware that change happens. And that even with people you like, sometimes changes are made. There is such a thing as getting a new voice in the room can be helpful. It's just, to me, based on everything you've educated me with and other people I respect, and when I think about this team in this season, and given that he really was kind of in a lame duck situation this year anyway, that it didn't look like there was anything about Boudreau that he was mailing it in. And as you said, that they were doing about what they could do, given their limitations and given their circumstances. In fact, some could say doing more than one might be expected. And that's the part that's what doesn't smell right about this, which isn't the same as saying that this GM, when he's brought in, doesn't have a right to say, hey, it's his deal. He's got to make a move. It's just, it's bewildering because of the timing, as you said. Not that he did it, but the timing, especially given the goaltending has been crappy this year, Louis. Let's be honest about it. It's been overall right now there is not a number one goaltender, in my opinion, on this team. I don't think you think there's a number one goaltender on this team that is playing like a number one on a consistent basis. So is that Boudreau's fault? I don't know. He's kind of stuck with what he's got here.
Look, Louis Lamoriello fired somebody, I think it was 5 games before the end of the year. I probably fired somebody within 12, 14 games in the year. Nothing surprises me about that.
Right.
The surprise is the fact that they were doing enough, as you just said, to keep in contention with, as you pointed out, their goaltending numbers below the majority of the league.
Yes.
So when you look at that, you say, wow, they're hanging in there, they're doing stuff. You're saying it's a surprise because these guys, with a couple of things that are really hurting them, are still able to compete and be in a playoff position, a playoff run. Now, one thing that people don't talk about, Dan, is when they look at the Wild, and it's hard to sit up in a crowd and just say this, but when you look at the Wild, what people just take for granted is they're a tough team to play against. If you go to the statistics, and they got so many different statistics now in this game, it's amazing. But if you go and look at the quality chances they give up compared to other teams in the league, they're among the best. And that's why they're able to hang in where they are right now. And that's why, and even with the goaltending, Stalock of late has given a good run. But overall, their goaltending's been below par this year. You can't hide the fact that it has been. You can't have 8-8-9 numbers and almost 3 goals against and say you've got top-notch goaltending. You haven't had it this year. You've had some games that are close, but the team itself, the way they're playing, and you got to give the coach some credit for that. And because he's got them playing a style that keeps them in games, keeps them, I go to the games, I get entertained. Even when they lose, I know that it's going to be a battle. You don't just come in and beat the Wild. You got to battle to beat them. So you got to give them credit for that. Now, I really believe that, I understand Billy making a change, and I thought he was going to make a change. I'm just wondering why, you can't blame that game on a coach last night. That is what I'm saying.
All right.
So there got to be other reasons why. Maybe he really thinks that there's going to be a difference in the run for a playoff position. But Boudreau's done a good job while he's been here. He's had a good run. He'll go on and get another job and be good. And a Wild, whether they've come out and stated it like the New York Rangers, they're in a building mode. They know that they've got to stockpile assets, and that's why I was so happy with Guerin's first trade, because he stockpiled assets. The thing he's got to do to start getting this team back to where we all want to see him, and it takes time to do that.
And there's no reason to believe. One of the theories I've heard advanced today, I got several emails on this, is, well, maybe Boudreau expressed dissatisfaction with the trade, that the trade, even if it's good for the team, is going to make it harder to win realistically this season, and that he got in the way of that. Boudreau kind of knew where he was at on this thing. I'd be shocked to hear that he would have gotten in the way or expressed grumbling about that kind of thing. Wouldn't you be?
I'd be shocked. Boudreau's been around long enough, and there's no way in the world that he was going to even let that trade affect his thinking, because he knows what he's got. He knows he's got enough. Let's just take that move it to Chicago. Joel Quenneville had Panarin taken away from him, traded because he wanted to get Saad back. Quenneville still lasted 2 years. He was livid about that trade. He came out publicly and just cut it out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But he still stayed there for a long while. And Panarin, as you saw last night, he's already got, 78 points now in the league this year, 27 goals, some for the Rangers. He's got the best total ever for the Rangers and matches Yager for the first amount of games that they've ever played there. And now you're talking about a player that was taken away from a coach who loved the player to take back Assad. And at that time, the rumor was Panarin was playing with Kane. Assad had been playing with Taves in Chicago. Saad was not signed because he wanted a lot of money free agent. They made a trade with Columbus. He goes to Columbus. And now Saad was in Columbus, and they said, Taves missed Saad. So, he went to the general manager, which I don't think he did, and lobbied to get Saad back, and the general manager trades Panarin for Saad. So you can imagine Quenneville at the time hated the deal. So these things happen, but coaches are smart enough to know that the general manager's got the final say. He's going to make the deal, and I'd be very surprised if they don't, because you always talk to the coach before and tell him what kind of deal you're making. Now he doesn't have to agree with you. No. You've got the final pull, but Boudreau is not a guy that would have been put out by that at all. I got to tell you.
Who's going to be the next coach of this team long term?
Well, here's a guy who's going to come in. Now, whether he's a coach or he becomes an assistant general manager as well, is Dougie Weight. Dougie Weight has got a lot of history in the league, very successful player, very good friend of Guerin's, played with Guerin, coached in the NHL. I had the good fortune of having on my team in the World Championship '93. He's really got leadership qualities. He will be in the mix. Now, the big decision is whether Bill says, you know what? Maybe I'd rather have Billy or Doug as my right-hand man and have Peter Laviolette coaching. I would say go after Gerard Gallant, but I don't think the Wild's got a chance of getting him. And I say that for two reasons. One, Seattle would go after him in a heartbeat.
Expansion, yeah.
Especially after what he's done with Vegas. So you think it's a natural to get that guy coming in there, and he was coach of the year, et cetera. And talk about guys getting fired. they went a 4-game losing streak right after they were in first place, and they fired him, which is mind-boggling in Vegas. And the other guy, Peter Laviolette, that Bill knows very well, and he could be in the mix. But I think Gallant, I'd be surprised if Detroit doesn't make a change. Gallant played with Yzerman in Detroit. Gallant's been tremendously successful in coaching, both in Florida and in Vegas. Detroit's going to end up last or second last, and I think maybe there's an opportunity there for Gallant to go back to Detroit if he wants to. And the other guy that was really or is in love with Gallant is Jim Nill. He was a teammate of Gallant's in Detroit. But Rich Bowness, after Montgomery, had his problems and they had to make a coaching change, and Bowness came in there and Dallas took off. They've been playing terrific. But now they slowed down a bit. If Dallas doesn't do anything in the playoffs and Gallant's still a free agent, Gallant will end up in Dallas.
Last but not least, I think the number now is, since last offseason, half the teams in the league have changed coaches, including a very busy regular season here where there's been, I think, 7 or 8 dismissals. Is this just, is this indicative of anything? Is it just that there are a bunch of jobs came open at the same time because there's these things are cyclical, or is there something funky going on in the NHL when it comes to replacing coaches too cavalierly or too quickly?
Well, I'll tell you what's happened. And it's happened over the last, it's been getting worse over the last 10 years. And I'm saying that because as the money's becoming bigger and mistakes have become larger. So in other words, when you missign a player and you're stuck at 2-3 years at $5 million and he can't play anymore. What's happened is the general managers have a shorter shelf life. Because if they make these bad decisions, they're gone. So the general managers, knowing that they got a shorter shelf life, the coaches now become a shorter shelf life because they can't stay around to. A lot of them don't get the chance to make 3 coaching changes. They might make 2 and then they're gone. So they are in a position right now of being, looked at very, very closely by the owners and the ownership. And like a guy like Ray Shero was done a terrific job in the NHL as long as he's been there. Got fired this year in New Jersey as GM. We're starting to see the whole executive office having a shorter shelf life. And it's filtering down to the coaches because the manager just has to get things right in a hurry because they know they don't have much time to rectify their mistakes if they are mistakes.
And whether it ends up being a good move or not doesn't matter. They're thinking it is, and they're just trying to fast forward or jumpstart the thing, and whether it's out of reality or desperation, either one.
Well, let me give you.
Go ahead.
I can give you one story that shows that kind of thing. When I was with the North Stars and Tony Esposito took over Pittsburgh, and he had this player. He called me, and the guy's name was Arlie Zalapsky, and he was a first-round pick, and he had made $195,000 a year. He was, high first pick, played well, but we didn't have free agency in the market at that time. And so Tony called me, said, Zalapsky wants $325,000. Don't give it to him. What should I pay him? I said, you pay him about $240. He says, he'll never take it. I said, what's he going to do? Tell him to sit on the beach and haul the moon until he gets ready to play, because there is no other chance, because you can't let, agents run this thing. You got to run it like a business. Okay, fine. So I didn't hear for 3 weeks, and I see Zalapsky signed. I called Tony. I said, hey, I saw Zalapsky sign. Yeah, everything's good. I said, well, how good is it? It's fine. I said, no. What did he sign for? $310. And I said to him, Tony, you can't do that. He said, Louis, I said, you realize you signing $310, you push all our players up like that? I said, and it's going to cost us all more money. And, it's starting to get out of hand here. He said, Louis, if we win, I'm fine. If we lose, I'm getting fired. So I need this guy. I'm not taking any chance. And that's what you got, the same thing that's going on right now.
That's it in a nutshell. You're right.
That's it.
By the way, I that whole image of sitting on the beach and howling at the moon, that sounds good to me. I can't wait to do that. You say that more cavalierly because you can do it anytime you want. But some of us, we just have, an occasional trip. But I mean, it's a good image. I don't mind it at all. It's something I think Guardsy and I both approve of, actually.
Well, I'm sure you'll get an opportunity to do it.
I hope. Great stuff as always, Louis. Thanks for the bonus time, and we will be in touch early next week.
All right, nice to talk.
Thanks, my friend. Lou Nanne, great stuff from him as always, and good to get bonus Louis on this very newsy day involving the Minnesota Wild. We're still not done with this story at all. Russo Radio will join at the bottom of the hour. We'll make it part of the Top 5 at 5. What else you can try to cover?
Yeah, a little bit of that in the Top 5 at 5. Some Gopher contract extensions was one of them. Richard Pitino, you'll have to come back. We've got some Combine news and a jersey retirement that's gotten some people's attention.
You're listening to Barreiro.